Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm here to present a work from a research project called LeapRE. My name is Teresa Simoes, and I work at the National Laboratory for Energy and Geology, LNEG, which is specially dedicated to renewable energies and geology, and also has activities of support to public policies and advanced training. So the work I'm presenting today is part of the LeapRE project. The name of the project is actually the Long-Term Europe-Africa Partnership on Renewable Energy, and its objective is mainly to increase the use of renewable energies in Africa, supported by research and technology transfer between Europe and Africa. And it is divided in three pillars. Pillar 1 coordinates external research funding and capacity building activities. Pillar 2 is where the technical research work is developed and is dedicated to specific research projects. And Pillar 3 is dedicated to management implementation of a future long-term research partnership between European and African unions. And by now, some projects are also being developed in Pillar 1. Today, I'm going to briefly present one of Pillar 2 projects, PURAMS, Productive Use in Rural African Markets Using Standalone Solar. And this project is dedicated to clean cooking and aims to help solving the health issues caused by cooking with firewood and other pollutant sources by developing a standalone solar cooking appliance. And why? Because there are limited options and access to clean cooking in Africa, being the most useful fuels, as we will see, firewood and charcoal. And these types of fuel tremendously impact on human health. Because renewables are a suitable solution to solve these problems and can be used in cooking appliances, and also because the sun is, at human timescales, an inexhaustible source of energy. However, we need appropriate solar cooker designs to make cost-effective cooking appliances, and that is why we are developing this project. So, in summary, the specific objectives for PURAMS are to do an off-grid market assessment for solar PV cooking, a solar resource assessment to enable cooker design and capacity assessment to support piloting of systems, to develop a standalone solar PV cooker and pilot it, to identify business models and engage policymakers to create an enabling environment, and finally, to develop or improve solar photovoltaic model technology for use in the cooker design. And now you may ask, why do we use PV and not simple thermal solutions? Well, it is a very good question, in fact, but it is especially because the latter are the most common and easy to use solutions, but we need a solution that can cook a large amount of food in a short time. So we cannot wait a long time to have our food cooked. Otherwise, the vendors will have no clients. They will just run away. So another reason is facing the grid problems in some countries. This can be a good synergy solution to use the electricity produced with the PV for other applications. So cooking habits and associated energy demand profiles are crucial to design cost-effective solar cookers. In this sense, the first task of the PURAMS project is to find out about the cooking habits in the target countries, in this case Rwanda, Kenya, and also Mozambique, where the project conducted door-to-door surveys as part of an in-depth data collection activity. The data collection activity had several stages. First, a pre-screening survey was developed. A second survey was then performed as a baseline study to understand current habits, not only the food they cook and the energy they spend in doing that, but also the social and economic context, information that we will use to develop a business model later in the project. After these two stages, the number of households was narrowed down, and electric pressure cookers were distributed to selected households in order to evaluate the electricity they spend when they are cooking with these equipments and related impacts that may happen in the cooking habits. So the EPC's data collection lasted for 6 months approximately, and at the end an exit study was conducted so that we could compare the period before and after the use of the EPCs, and also to learn about the pros and cons of the EPC's use by the user's point of view. So each household received an EPC like this one in the picture and a smart meter. And in the user words, the best part of this was the training that they received on the use of the EPCs. So we started with 500 households in the pre-screening stage and ended up selecting around 105 in Kenya, and started with 200 and ended up with 50 in Rwanda. Here we can see some of the main results that we obtained with the baseline study survey. So, for example, the number of daily meals were 2 to 3, and lunch is not cooked nor consumed in the dwellings in most of the days. So people don't have lunch at home most of the times. Also, we found out that in households with children, you have more than 3 daily meals, which is natural. The cooking duration was between 30 minutes at breakfast and 1 hour at dinner. The number of diners in each household varied from 3 to 12, and most frequently you had 5 people eating. Most of the houses had 4 children, and the preferred fuel and cook stove were also analyzed in this survey. So from the graphs, we can see that the most used fuel in both countries is firewood, as we expected from the preparatory work that had been done before the surveys, and the preferred cook stove was inbuilt firewood meko in Kenya and traditional 3-stone cooker in Rwanda. So in this slide you can see an example of each of the cookers. After the surveys, we began the EPC's experiments with the objective of estimating daily profiles for the electricity consumption to be used in solar PV cooker system design. In the figure, we can see the power spent per hour in a sample of households, and the households represented were the 20 with major consumption level during the day. Another thing that we needed to analyze was the relationship between the EPC power demand profile and the available PV power. And here we show as a performance metric the amount of meals that can be cooked solely with the PV power. And here we can have a glance on the main conclusions, different for each country. In both countries, large PV systems are required to fulfill part of the cooking energy demand when not considering storage. Thus, storage will be a very relevant component of our system. We also noted differences between the countries. For example, in Rwanda, the use of the EPCs is better suited to local solar PV profiles, so it is a better match of the cooking power demand with the PV production profiles. Now, some thoughts from the users after the EPC's experiment. The disadvantages have to do especially with the fact that they are using pressure to cook. And the advantages are somehow expected and are related with the free time to do other things due to speed of cooking. And what surprised me the most was, as I referred, the fact that the high number of people appreciated the training in pressure cooking. Another thing is that the fact that the users could not cook fried food and other types of food in the EPCs and other identified gaps led us to study alternatives as a deep frying cooker. And here we can see the characteristics of each solution. Here we can see an example of solution that can be used. In this case, the cooker is a deep fryer cooker and the feeding system includes solar PV and storage. In this case, a prototype was built using a combination of PTC heating elements and resistive heating elements, and the remaining characteristics can be seen here on the slide, and you can see with more deep attention afterwards. With this, the users can cook around 0.5 kilogram per session. And here we can see some characteristics of the DC EPC, which is somehow similar to the ones that the households received. Well, I think it is the same. So in summary, and noting that this is still an undergoing project ending in the second part of next year, it was possible to evaluate the cooking habits and energy needs in 2 countries by data collection, and these are being used to design the system, test, and develop the business model. One highlight is that without storage, the PV cooker requires large peak capacity, and this may be very expensive, which may hinder economic feasibility. The deep fryer solution requires more power and needs further studies. So this is something that we are going to follow up in the next time. About the project next steps, policymakers and stakeholders need to be involved. So in this sense, we launched questionnaires to identify policy and regulatory barriers to solar cooking, and also to have an idea of the value chain. As we speak, a prototype is being manufactured. It will be operating in the end of this conference week, and we are now analyzing data from the surveys related with the economic context and other sources to develop the business plan that will be ready in the end of September. So thank you very much for your attention.